Good morning, fellas, and welcome to an episode of TSAN After Dark. On this episode, we'll be discussing the strange occurrences that happened during the Dyatlov Pass Incident between February 1st and 2nd of 1959. This incident involved 9 experienced hikers led by Igor Dyatlov. He was the group's leader, having the most experience. Although all of the hikers were young, most of them being 21 to 23, one of them was 38 years old. And all of these hikers were a high level of experience. They were grade 2 hikers from the Ural Polytechnical Institute. After completing this trek of the Northern Ural Mountains, they would have all been upgraded to grade 3, which is the highest rank that a hiker can get in the USSR's hiking program. Unfortunately, there was something strange that occurred, and all 9 hikers died. And they were all found under uncertain circumstances. During their trek up the Northern Ural Mountains, they established camp on the slopes of Kholat Syakhl. I hope I pronounced that right. I don't speak Russian. The area where they set up camp is now named after their leader, Igor Dyatlov, and it is known as the Dyatlov Pass. So while they had the camp set up, during the night while they were sleeping, something occurred. It's uncertain what happened, but all 9 hikers left the tent, and they were underprepared for the wilderness outside. They were unprepared for the snow, for the cold, for the elements that they were going to be facing. There were indicators and evidence that the tent was cut open from the inside, and there were 9 different sets of footprints with different amounts of protection, whether it be socks or shoes or nothing, just barefoot, leading away from the tent into the nearby woods. I say that the woods were nearby, but they were actually 1.5 kilometers or 0.93 miles away from the camp, which is a long way to walk barefoot in the snow. And all of the bodies were found in their underwear. Nobody was prepared to be out in the wilderness. The causes of death of all 9 bodies were found to be 3 of them from physical trauma and 6 of them from hypothermia. Included in the physical trauma, there was 1 fatal skull injury, there was 2 with fatal chest trauma, there was 1 with a fractured skull. 4 of the bodies were found in a creek with running water. 3 of the bodies in the creek had soft tissue damage to the face. 2 of them were missing eyeballs. 1 of them was missing its tongue. 1 of them was missing its eyebrows. After finding the bodies, there was an investigation that launched. The investigation concluded that there was a compelling natural force that forced all 9 hikers out of the tent. The theories include animal attacks, hypothermia, an avalanche, katabatic winds, which is a kind of wind that carries high-density air down a slope, and the higher density air would cause the snow to move at a different rate. Infrasound-induced panic, described as low-frequency sound that is below the human hearing level. The sound pressure in the given area must be sufficiently high for anybody to perceive that kind of sound. The last theory is military involvement. What is certain is that something forced these 9 hikers to abandon all their training and all their expertise and leave their tent totally unprepared for the wilderness. Russia reopened an investigation into the incident in 2019, 60 years after the incident occurred. The conclusions were presented in July of 2020. An avalanche is believed to be the catalyst of the events. All 9 hikers survived the avalanche initially and left the camp underprepared and died of hypothermia. A study performed in 2021 suggests that the avalanche was a slab avalanche, which means a wall of snow came and just pushed more snow. The 9 hikers left the camp, and when they went to the woods, they seemed to have made a small makeshift fire because investigators found the remnants of a fire near some woods. Next to the remnants of the fire, they found 2 bodies, and the nearest tree had branches broken up to 5 meters, or 15 feet, suggesting that somebody had climbed the tree to get a better view of the area. Between the camp and the makeshift fire, 3 bodies were found, bringing the total to 5 bodies. They were all at different positions between the fire and the camp, as if one died and then the 2 carried on, and then the other died and then 1 more carried on. But they all seemed to be positioned as if they were on their way to leave the fire and head back to the camp. The final 4 hikers were found 2 months later in a ravine 75 meters further into the woods. That's another 246 feet. My conclusion is that 9 hikers would not have willingly went out into the wilderness unprepared, especially if they are as experienced as these hikers seem to be. Something forced them out of their camp. I'm not so certain that I'm sold on the avalanche idea, but it does add up. And I do not think that 3 of them would have left the makeshift camp to return to the tent as underprepared as they were. I think that they would have stayed together at the fire and found a way to survive. I do not think that 3 of them would have willingly left to head back to the tent unless that was their only option. I originally had other theories about this incident that involved supernatural forces, such as some kind of psychosis setting in, or the infrasound causing them to be induced with panic and just thinking that they have to get out of the tent as soon as possible. Because I can't think of any explanation why 9 hikers, 9 collective hikers with as much experience as they have, would have left their tent completely underprepared for the wilderness. But after doing the research, my assumption is now that the avalanche started and some of the hikers were jarred awake and they woke up the other hikers and they had to leave the tent in a hurry. They had no time to prepare. They were just going to take the risk of traveling out into the wilderness as opposed to being buried under tons of snow. And upon reaching the new makeshift fire campsite that they made, the leader, Igor Dyatlov, would have decided that they needed to split up. So he left 2 people at the fire to survey the area and wait, and then he took a crew, including himself, of 3 people back to the tent to gather supplies, and he sent 4 more further into the woods to find a way out. But eventually, everybody succumbed to the cold. One thing that still bothers me is that I cannot explain the soft tissue facial damage. The only explanation I could think of is that an animal was feasting on the soft parts of the face. I don't understand why an animal would eat somebody's eyebrows, but I can understand the eyeballs and the tongue. But something just doesn't sit right about eyebrows missing. It doesn't add up. This mystery is over 60 years old now, and we still don't have a definitive cause to the reason it happened. Now, I'm not sure if we ever will. I don't think I'm going to solve the mystery, but I do hope that one day we find out what really happened to these 9 hikers. As experienced as they were, I don't think a collective group of 9 hikers would have willingly left the safety of their tent without some kind of preparations, even if it was just clothes, something to keep warm just for a little while. But Mother Nature is scary, and when you make it up into the cold mountains with extreme temperatures and extreme snowfall, I guess anything can happen. Thank you for joining me for an episode of TSAN After Dark. We'll see you back here next time after the sun goes down, after dark.